Most important attribute that you've seen work for a trader.
Self-reflection.
And why?
Because there are, so say, take the last 2 years, for example, take the last year with sanctions and geopolitics, whatever. There's people that have blown up. There's people that have lost their desks. The people that have, and that is definitely, I had lunch with a trader the other day who said he's seen numbers he's never seen before in his reality, right? So,
up or down, or?
Oh, just in general, he's not the same way that other people have made money in this industry, in certain markets are collectively they believe are changing, right? From what I am speaking to the experts, I'm not, right? I'm not a trader, I speak to them. But so he was literally saying to me, he was like, so I've got friends that desks are blown up, for example, and it's definitely ego driven too. It's going to bounce back. It's going to come back,
And we've been in, and I love that answer because this period of like so much money being made by a lot of people,
yeah,
and then suddenly so much money not being made or by everyone.
yeah.
Those people that thought it was all about them are the ones that get hit the hardest. And that's why you say self-reflection, right?
Exactly.
Stay humble.
Because grit, sure, but you can be gritty and not be self-reflective and your desk blows up. And by the way, when you're not, when it's not your private book and you're doing it with the company's money, like you should have huge accountability on that. And it can't be like, oh, but I made you loads of money previously. It's got to be consistent self-reflection and being like, oh my goodness, I've not seen this certain way currently. Because I've got broker friends where they've lost clients because they just disappeared as well. So it all connects.
Love it. Another question. So in the first 10 seconds of a conversation with a future potential client, potential employee for a client, what is the leading thing that makes you go yes or no within those first 10 seconds?
Oh, I love that. I can hear it in their voice. And for me, I can hear it in somebody's voice. As in, do they take themselves seriously? Do they have... It's one of those things where in the first 10 seconds, because all my job is to bring out the best in them. It's got nothing to do with me. My only job is to ask the best questions to bring out their talent, right? So you can hear it in their voice. And so I ask them something very non-sequential, and then I hear how they answer it, and I'll know in the first 10 seconds. Doesn't mean you get every hire right, by the way. Don't hold me to that, because that's what I do.
Apart from money, what is the leading, most consistent thing in a business? A genuine thing, not an anecdotal thing people say, but a genuine thing that you think employees in general are most seeking.
Hard one to answer because I don't want to answer as myself, because myself would be, and the people that I hire for the majority of the clients that I work with, because I don't work with everyone obviously, and so I'm passionate in working with people that are disruptive and are changing the status quo. So I truly believe it's actually after money, it's being part of something. What is mission critical to this business? And being enthused by that. Passionate leadership, exceptionally passionate leadership, which is why I cannot stand working with companies that have weak leaders because they hire weak people.
What is the leading worst attribute that you think turns future employees off?
From candidates. I was going to say laziness, but it's actually not it. Do you know, I'd number one thing, consistently it's they didn't ask me any questions, like proper questions, not how many annual leave days do you have, or like, do you know what I mean? Like, not being disrespectful, but someone comes into an interview with a client, and if they haven't done their research, it's so obvious in their questioning. Active listening and knowing then what to ask based on that, truly being interested.
That always annoys future employer.
Yeah, 100%.
So ask the question reverse then. What is the leading thing that employees get put off by? Take your time.
I would say inconsistencies. Generally, inconsistency. So, for example, and it's important for clients to have more than one round of interviews, whether it's teams on site, different leaders, obviously at different levels. But it's it's inconsistency of communication, kind of not knowing where they stand, up to the point of like, why would I join this business if I don't know exactly what I'm about to enter? Even to the point where you're almost like wanting them to reject the opportunity. This is exactly what it's going to take for you to come into this business. So I think inconsistency of information and communication.
Okay, last two. Quick fire, what is your advice, leading advice for employees or future employees joining somewhere?
Advice for employees. You've got to have a service-first attitude to begin with. I don't understand why this is... so from my experience, it changes sometimes a little bit. It's almost like I speak to some candidates and it's all about what the company can do for them. And by the way, they're entirely right to think that, but it can't... the best people have a service-first attitude of, I will do more, I'll go above and beyond. And by the way, I'll do it more than my current paycheck, because you definitely will be rewarded meritocratically by the right people. If you've chosen that company and you're going to join them, advice to an employee would be go above and beyond, way beyond your paycheck, because you will be a future leader in that business if you want to be.
Or even somewhere else. If
but we've seen that. So not everyone that's joined Onyx has stayed. They go and join other businesses. So, but because they accelerated their career here or wherever, you constantly go above and beyond whatever you believe is hard work.
So final then, advice for clients as in hiring, the leading advice for them.
Spend more time really analysing the need for the hire. I feel that sometimes some clients are like just filling archetypal positions that aren't actually needed. And then so what happens with that, then it's like there's generic job descriptions, or they're not clear on why they're doing it. They don't, and when you really cut down to the core of it, it's and by the way, that's why the candidate and the employee is like, I'm not really sure, because the person hiring doesn't really know why they need the seat. It's really drilling down to the understanding of what impact will this person have in our company. And if it's growing, we really need this because of X, no problem. But I would think that sometimes, from my perspective and the candidate's perspective, some clients aren't clear on why they need roles, and they end up either they're not hiring the right people, or they pull the role altogether.
Hi Jordan, thanks for coming on. So this weird situation where like probably some people watching this in the industry know exactly who you are, infamous, some might say, others no clue, right? So just to give a bit of context, you are a recruitment owner, you're a recruitment firm, sorry, you're a recruiter owner, you're in a recruitment firm, and you've actually in a weird way been on the same journey as the Onyx guys, the Mandara guys, the market makers, and going from, small young businesses and players to growing with it. Very much AEJ's grown, and you've been helping, hire grads and now senior people. Now you're doing, loads of stuff in different areas and hedge funds and all the rest of it. But I thought that's why it'd be interesting to bring you in, because there's a lot of context you have in the industry. You've literally lived and breathed it in the trenches almost, right? You meet with brokers all the time. You're in there with the traders. You've watched them grow and watched them become managers. 10 years roughly. It's a long time. A lot can change. So that's the context for the viewers. But I guess like starting out, maybe we could just hit straight away with maybe the major things you've seen change, or maybe we could just dial all the way back, comparing right now to the very beginning, how the whole landscape has changed for traders. Let's start with that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously, when I first started working with you guys, we did a big push on trader analysts and
which is grad trader, junior trader, kind of grad scheme stuff.
100%, yeah. Like assessment center. What do we think would be creating a good characteristic and background for a successful trader, right? And so fast forward then 5-10 years, you see these some of these excel and become heads of desks or leaders in their own right of asset classes, etc. So I think that the journey that a trader has to go on massively is one of, I would say, first you've got to think about yourself. How am I actually? Of course, employers have to be attractive to the candidates, but from a candidate perspective, how am I attractive to an employer, right? And so, firstly, when you're gathering those types of people into a business, grit, resilience, and relentless self-improvement.
All these like classic trader traits. But I think, now you just triggered memories. Like, you were there when we were saying, okay, there was this way that we hired in Mandara, and that we got hired in, myself and Omar and others who are now, trading as managers and owning businesses.
Yeah.
But it was not as simple as to say, let's just do what we've done, because times change, right? And you need to evolve the recruitment and what you want with the times. So it's very much that, like, when someone says what makes a good trader, that's what you just said. It's like, you find it hard to define, like, because it's so intricate depending on the business, depending on like then and there what the business needs, right? And I guess that's probably the first thing. It's like when people out there see grad schemes, like a BP was a huge one. I think Glencore are doing more of it now. Trafigura have like a kind of semi one, and we're very much like fresh grads, but like we think we can mold people. But it did like change quite a bit. We've gone like super sporty, super like voice trading style people, gregarious, all that, to suddenly like super quantitative, and then in and around those, because it's what we think we need at the time. And that must be from the outside in quite weird in a way. But I guess, how do you manage that?
Massively, and also a lot of people had a few big decisions to make. Like BP and Shell. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's as a graduate going in, it's probably a 3-year shift, a desk shift rotation. I know that people, when they first come out of university, were getting bigger salary offerings at the time, and then you say to yourself, but do I believe in myself to work for like an Onyx, a market maker where I'm going to get a lot more opportunity, and then in 3 years' time, turning around looking at my peers, and I'm far further ahead, and actually adding more value and making more money.
Well, that was always the promise, again, like for the market making side of things. It's like, come join us. And if you go and research, people say these are small players, these are the bottom of the rung, or whatever. And as you say, you're going to get more money at bigger places, but you're going to be on this, and you've got a big brand, but it's going to be 3-4 years before you even get a look at a seat. So that was the spiel back about banks versus and the big majors. That's the dichotomy, right? You go there, 100%. You get there, you go there, and then they kind of had to believe that would happen, which is quite hard to believe, because just because a few other people did it, why should I believe it? So that was always the challenge. You've got to take a lower salary and take a chance, but you do get a lot of autonomy. And
to begin with, though, as well, like it's so I'll earn more money now. It's that black hole belief I've always thought about. It's like, and it's in anything, sales, trading, technology. Do I believe in the vision and the mission of the business I'm joining, as well as my own skill set and confidence in my abilities, that I can be ahead of the curve than the others, knowing that I wouldn't get as big as opportunity there, but I get paid at the beginning earlier.
Yeah, so you've had to get inside these guys' minds, like guys and girls, like intimately, right? So endless. The amount of calls you must have had with people that I've never met because they never make
Literally
it, right?
Thousands.
And it's just getting into that psyche, and like, I guess there's so much to unravel here, but like, to begin with, I think it'd be interesting to say, it is challenging for a grad, and actually for anyone in a career. You're thinking, what route do I actually take? And I think as owners and as managers, you're always tempted to have a kind of closed off mind, being like, why can't you see, if you join here, you've got this massive opportunity to learn and to have autonomy and all these obvious things to you because you've seen it and how, but they don't know. And you're told not to trust employers. You're told to, like, obviously,
or recruitment people either.
Or recruitment people. So you've got to make this judgment decision. So then you go out and talk to people in the market. They've got their own biases, though. It is a very hard position to be in, isn't it? So, like, I guess I sympathise with people starting out. But
that's why I find it super interesting and actually exciting about it, because so someone comes in with all of their background, family, expectation, right? So we want you to go to a big name brand. You've gone to a top university. I mean, look at people that we've placed, right? People that were at Cambridge and worked their way through university, like, working at anywhere, like McDonald's, for example, making sure they do that. But then their expectation potentially could be go to the big name. The risk you have to take as an individual and the backing in yourself to go, no, I'm going to go with this company because I'm going to have a faster track of my career, getting the next future players of tomorrow to see that and actually hear it and understand it.
For traders, it's your first trade.
100%.
Do I take the the job which gives me a more guaranteed route, if you like. And I think the other thing is that, and it's certainly how I thought, and I think people are starting to think more and more, is like, am I in the right area? Forgetting even the role to some degree, will this still be here? And we know that in 2021, that was kind of that peak, like anti-oil, that was the peak, like, you know, whatever you want to call it, woke, like all that kind of stuff was going mad, right? And we were losing people and not being able to hire people because of that. We can talk more about that. But again, it's like you can forgive these people because they're looking at it going, look at what the media's saying, look at what people are saying. Why would I want to join a place or join an industry that might not be here in 5 to 10 years? It might change, it might be a pariah and all that. And how ironic that then 2 years later, everyone wanted to be in oil and energy because the prices went so high and everyone made so much money in the industry. And they're now going, well, actually, I wouldn't mind being part of an industry that's huge. And even like tech people we've hired are like moved from Amazon and Google and these places to join trade houses and people in oil and energy because they see that as the new thing. And the narrative has switched to, wait, all the AI and all that, it's going to be a fight for the world's resources. I need to be in the energy trade. And, you know, and that's so important. And remember, sorry, just to finish off, because I think you got some good insights on all this collectively, it's the parents as well. And before people say, oh yeah, you're older, you shouldn't be listening to your parents. People do even into their like 30s, right?
100%.
And you got parents who have their biases and their views of where things are going. And they obviously read the same media and listen to the same kind of biases and all that kind of stuff. So you've got all that to kind of go, well, this is my first huge trade as a person. How do I weigh that up? And I guess for me, back to you, it's like, well, find the people who are looking at that landscape that can, I think at the very least, think independently. Because if they don't, then they're just going to get swayed and we're never going to be the shop they join because it's smaller relative to BP or whatever. That's the first thing. But the second thing, it's like, are you going to be able to handle all the uncertainty and even then you get into all the resilience and all that kind of stuff. But to lay you up, that's a lot of stuff. But that whole landscape, what's going on in the mind of these guys are saying, I guess I'm saying.
Well, firstly, I'll go back to your point about the whole sport background or the archetypal person that used to be a trader or is still a trader, but also then like the quantum stuff, right? It's so brilliant now that you get that way up of characteristics and backgrounds and people, right? So you've got people that are computer science back, then going into the sporty people that come in. There's no actual one type of person that is successful as a trader. Then number two, coming about the wokeism or whatever was happening. So interesting. Before we had that smash of COVID where like everyone was getting a bit just obsessed with being so anti-commodities markets, and obviously specifically oil, which I understand, we literally used to lose candidates at the very preliminary conversations just from that defense mechanism of, no, I don't want to work in that industry. It would look bad on my CV. Yeah. I had that time and time again. That's totally okay. So you are looking for people because if Onyx is the type of business that thinks differently, goes against the status quo to some extent and challenges for all the right reasons, you've got to find the types of people that are like that also. Because otherwise, you have to bring the right people into the right business. It's a marriage of the way people think. And if you're not a critical thinker and you don't, and of course, by the way, your friends, your family, you have to listen to them. But hearing them and listening to them and just being told what to do are two massively different things. And I unearthed very quickly, the search team, just ways of being able to get to the heart of that very quickly, because at the end of the day, if you're not even going to see and get into a market and understand exactly what it's all about, and all you're listening to is the scaremongering news that was projecting at the time, you're not going to survive in this environment.
So I guess flipping that on its head then, you might have a candidate who you think has got some strong attributes, generic attributes, but they might not be geared towards Onyx because of what you just said. But on the flip side, you might be geared towards more of a major. Like, BP spent a long time riding the trend of net zero, and they spent a lot of money on it, and they lost their CEO because of it, right? And the Shell was the same. So the point is that you could have quite easily joined them then, and I guess you would be, if you were recruiting for those guys, I guess you would have pointed them that way. But I don't think you really deal with the majors so much, but you do deal with hedge funds, banks. Yeah, banks, I guess similar, right? They do tend to follow narratives and stuff like that. But then brokers was the other one. Yeah. So do you find that ever with brokering on the grad side of things?
You know what, actually, no. It's so interesting from a sales perspective, obviously because it's sales and trading. not at all, because I think, and you know, this is just my personal opinion. Of course, people see it differently, but I think sales is such a relentless, awful environment sometimes that I don't think you really
you don't have time to think about these other things.
You don't have time. You've got to love sales. And by the way, same with trading. That's why real traders through markets, whatever asset class or market you do, you're obsessed with markets and how things impact. And the commodities markets affects financial markets to its entirety. But on the sales perspective, they don't really care as much because it's like, I want to be a salesperson. I want to build networks. I want to make good money. And so they just want to work insane hours, entertain, build relationships, and also as well, by the way, from a broking perspective, what people actually forget is they're a service provider. You're there, like I am in the search industry, recruitment. You're there to provide a service, and so you've got to have a service first attitude. And so when you're looking for a trader, it's got to be like ambition, ridiculously driven, but also you've got to try and have difficult conversations to unearth what type of person they are under pressure. And of course you do that through assessment centres or the way that you interview, but actually my job at the beginning is to see what their triggers are and to see how they're going to adapt to huge...
Try and unearth it the best you can. Because everyone puts a story on, like Leger, the guy runs Sing, always says that, like a CV and a story is designed for gloss, right? It's a presentation of their best version of themselves.
100%.
And when you ask them certain awkward questions, they obviously think it's a question that they need to rebuttal and answer well. They don't actually think they need to genuinely tell the truth.
No, it's like justify it and almost like robotically come back and give you the answer you think you
might
want.
as well say straight away, like there's the recent hire who said exactly that, right? It was in like completely fine with oil, and then when it came to the interview, it was actually, I'm not going to interview because...
because what it look like for the rest of the person's CV.
Yeah.
But that's what I love about... so, let's look at it, right? So in terms of against like the oil majors and the other people in the industries that when you were building what you were doing, that I would say didn't think it could happen, so to speak, right? When you look at people like that, where you've got your media and marketing, your podcast and your production, that's exactly what it's for. So, because I'm really mean candidates do, even to recruiters, they present this version of themselves where they just say yes to stuff, people pleasing. Of course, I'll go through the process.
Give myself optionality. I might as well get the job and then decide.
100%, because whenever if I'm in a job, I can move to a different job. That's and by the way, selfishly, they're entitled to.
No, exactly. Then it becomes the company's job to be able to assess, but are they telling the truth?
Yes, but the beauty about podcasts or online literature,
at least you
present exactly who you are, and then they can decide. And
but again, you say that, but not all companies do. They use media to just pretend. Like you see the trade houses, like they do all their LinkedIn stuff. It's pure virtue signaling. I just find it so odd because I'm like, but then people are going to join you. They're going to realize you're a boys' club mostly, or at least like a club in general. You do funky stuff in the markets, like it's a trader, mentality a lot of the time. They're just going to think you just gaslighted me, basically. Like I always find that strange. You're gonna get the type of people that think that's what they want, and then they go into an environment where it's not like that. That's way worse. At least when someone's presented the realities and said some hard things and answered some hard questions, and then they self-police, don't they? Well, I'm not going to join because whatever.
But that's why it's super interesting working with people like you, Leger, John, because there's this like no bullshit mentality with it, right? Whereas
it's just a waste of time, I think.
Totally. But then not only I'm drawn to clients that have the same ethos, because the smoke and mirrors stuff and putting on a show is no disrespect for that's for BBC News. It's not for businesses that when you get under the hood of it and you've been missold a role.
But I'm trying to think why they do it, because again, I've been speaking to traders at trade houses like obviously all the time, but recently the most consistent thing that comes up is we've got recruitment issues for the next generation.
Yeah.
And you're like, it's so weird to hear them say it and then go, why don't you look at what you're presenting to grads though? You don't talk about they don't want to talk about the money they make. Okay, fine. But grads want to know how much money they can make.
It's the number one thing.
Yeah, it's the number one thing. The other thing is like, you're presenting all this virtue signal stuff. They don't want to work for a virtue signal company. They want to be a trader, and they want to cut the bullshit a lot of the time. So that's what you're presenting. So why do you think you're getting people who are just like, and then they see roles that aren't specifically about trading. They're like these like words that are a bit like, do they actually, you don't know what they mean. I think VTOL got commercial analyst. Like, what's a commercial analyst? Like, that's fine for you guys, but I think it's confusing for a recruiter. And we found that with trader analysts. That's why I corrected you at the beginning.
Oh, sure.
Because trader analysts were like, it sounds like you're going to be an analyst. It's like, no, you're a junior trader.
Yeah.
We're going to train you to be a trader. And we kind of made that was a mistake, I think, all these years, really. I mean, whatever. But it's just I think it's a useful point. It's almost like advice, whether they take it or not. But do you see what I'm getting at? As in, like, I find that, I guess we're just agreeing with each other about that whole, why present a version of you that's not you, and then complain when you don't get the people that you want. So that's what I'm trying to say.
What do they think it is, though? So from your perspective, it's your virtue signaling and presenting an environment that's not really true.
You're just
when
not
you get
getting the pool in to assess to find the good people because you've presented yourself in a way that's not.
Okay, but also what they've done is, because they're bigger companies, they're also being sloppy, though. So in the sense of, like, they're not really headhunting the next future leaders or the next grads. They're also
not thinking about it, I guess.
No, but because they're branding, they have thousands of applicants.
It's also very difficult for a trade house and even majors, because when you're in trading seats, the incentives are all over the place. It's like they're not incentivized to get the next generation. And how can you get them to be incentivized? You have to be it has to be an internal business thing. Like, we're actually going to reward you for training traders, and like we give people percentage of the money that other traders they train make, because otherwise why would they care? Like, that's the thing that you've got to, if you want something, you have to incentivize.
But that's super well known in the broking world, though. Like, no disrespect to that, but everyone goes in and no one gets trained. Like, I know they go through like 5 to 10 juniors before they find the guy that or the girl that can cope in that environment. So, like, the fact that you address that, and when we're going to actually have because there's going to be a big vacuum of leadership issues if those companies don't.
But that's exactly what
that.
they say. The next generation, we're screwed. It's like, that doesn't really surprise me.
But let's drill down on it, because growing up as a fresh grad now, right? Of course, it's not like war, famine that you go through, no problem. But you are in an environment where everything's at a click of a button, right? Uber, Deliveroo, everything. So to try and find those people that are actually creators and not consumers becomes harder and harder. So if they're not working hard at their recruitment strategy in that respect, then they are going to get the people that aren't going to excel, in my humble opinion.
Yeah. On the flip side, though, there are some very successful people that come through the BP scheme in particular.
Sure.
That was like, for a long time, just like, let them do their years at BP, get trained, and then we'll just hire them. Like, half of VTOL, Trafigura and Mercury, these guys were just like all BP people.
Yeah.
But these days you are seeing more like the Glencores, like, and again, going back to the banks, we need to talk more about the banks. So they still have these schemes, and they do create some people, but I just think they're not playing. Personally, I think they're not playing the probability game well enough. They're not obsessing about it as much as us. But maybe we've got the time to. We do live and die by our people. Like, we don't have as big of a system as these banks and these trade houses.
Yeah.
So it's just an interesting reflection. But anyway, I think this is going to be a new thing for them, right? The new landscape of how to recruit the best talent. And even when I started, and I'm sure you remember, it was weird to have junior traders like at 22. That was seen as like, I know that might be a thing at banks, and these days it's whatever, but it was like, no, you need to be 5 years experience on a desk, work your way up, and then you get a chance because you're lucky, and that's how it was.
Yeah.
So
like, earn your stripes, I get that.
Yeah, it has changed. Like, you can be a 25-year-old trade house trader now. That was a very unusual thing, I think, 10 years ago. So that would be one big change. So I think it's already evolving, but anyway.
Sure.
So, to kind of pivot then, I guess, what do you think some of the things that people struggle with in this industry, like to, coming in and then making something of themselves? Because the context there is like, why shouldn't I make this work if I have this CV? And, I might even just be quite talented, proven in different things. What makes energy, oil trading, sales, broking, what makes it unique to something else? Because isn't it weird that one person can fail in this industry and do phenomenally well in another industry, and vice versa?
Yeah.
So what have you seen? What would you comment on that point?
I generally think it's an individual by individual basis, and that's an obvious statement. But what I mean by that is, like, if you pull it back to the foundations and the simplicity of it, it's still always going to be work very long hours, understand and log into the system as quick as possible, and then bring exceptional, hardworking, and try and be creative with your ideas. It's that those things are never going to change. And so the reason why people are drawn to the oil and commodity markets is because it's lucrative and you can make good money in it. And I'm sorry, but like if I speak to brokers all the time. If I'm a broker in a different asset class compared to oil or commodities, everyone's trying to get into oil and commodities. With
where the money is right now. Yeah.
Correct. And I don't mean that disrespectfully to the other ones, but like I speak all the time to people. They're like, listen, if you have an opportunity for me in oil, like get me in. Yeah, massively. So if you can apply the same principles as an individual, if you're already hardworking, already do the hours, already going above and beyond, you're as a broker, if you're entertaining till early hours at night and you can do it and make more money from doing it and add more value to that company, why wouldn't you do that?
So it's basically like, can you bring the best version of yourself to this specific industry in the way it presents itself? And sometimes that's not feasible because you might have a fundamental problem with the way there are identifiable characteristics in this market of how people behave.
Yeah.
Well, the younger generation in particular, as they're coming in, we've got more females, we've got more people in general who you could tell they just think slightly differently. They're definitely in a new generation. You have those the difference between a 30 to 35 year old, 25 to 30 year old. It kind of blends. It's not so aggressive, but then now we're starting to see like a big aggressive shift from our senior traders at 35ish down to like 22-year-olds that think very differently. And they're not even tempted, some of these, to go and get entertained by brokers. Like I social anxiety or these things. They're like pretty open about it. Like fuck that, and or whatever it is. And it's quite interesting to me because they obviously will be the generation that the more that they are cohesive and the more that they are, they think collectively in a certain way, that will overwhelm any industry, right? You can't just retain a way of thinking if it goes completely against the grain of a collective mindset. Do you see what I'm trying to say?
100%.
So I think that is coming. I know everyone says these things, but it does feel like a pretty decent shift. But it doesn't take it away from they are super hungry and want to make money, of course, always about making money in this game, I guess. But they're not even tempted by, as I say, the classic things that would hook you in. But my point I was trying to make was, if you're not into that, like if I take Ramona, right? She's one of our top salespeople. She's in Dubai right now. She pick up the phone. She's disciplined. She's methodical. She's made herself as much of an expert as she can without being a trader or whatever in trading. But she never really liked the London scene and the broking scene and the club scene. It's just not. I don't like it. It's just not. And you could say, well, if you were a broker, you don't have a choice though. You better like that game or forget it, right? You're just not going to be successful. So she's taken a path within the sales arena that suits her, and then it's definitely the future. She'll be absolutely fine. But you see what I'm trying to get at, in a way that you got to, if you're amazing, so you've got the three things that you said, and then you apply it to this world that doesn't really, but then you don't really like it, well then you're screwed, isn't it? So you've got to find that industry environment that you want to bring out those three things. Do you see what I'm getting at?
Totally, but how interesting and exciting for her that she just adapted it and overcame it and went to an environment where that's not necessarily the culture, right? And then you applied those in a different way.
100%, yeah. And as you said though, you're back to your three things. She's got those, but wants to apply it in an area that it gets rewarded and suits her, rather than being okay, well, I'll adapt myself.
Exactly. I won't go with the status quo.
Yeah.
I'm challenging that. By the way, I see it all the time. I totally agree with you, Nick. It's less of a, it's of course networking and get to know people and stuff, but less of probably a drinking and that sort of and being entertained culture as well. And that's great for it because with the digital and AI advances that are happening, you need to constantly, if you are in a service industry, you should be thinking about adapting and thinking, how much can I add more value? Not just from building a relationship and going for a beer. It's got to be the people like Ramona, that mindset of acting really fast, getting herself out there, moving to a different environment where her skill sets add more value. That's exactly the way that you should be thinking, especially if that's the way that the trading mindset's going.
But if you were a father, which you are, and you've got a child and they're going into the industry, you want to give them advice if that's the way the relationship goes, you got to admit most parents would just be look, just find a way, just find something, they just want you to be safe and secure, right? Just get it working no matter how. And a lot of the time the advice is find a mentor or find someone that you want to work with or work for, and then basically follow that person, which has definitely got its merits 100%, right? But the flip side, what I was trying to get at was it's a risk, because if you follow a certain mindset that's dying, that's another trade you've got to make. What type of thinking do I want to have? Because I'll take myself, I can really talk for myself really, and I just didn't like, maybe it was a sign of like where I was versus, I wasn't in a trade house or whatever, but it was very much like, if you're in this game and you want to be successful, you have to earn your stripes, like you said. You have to, the big guys are the big guys. It was just like boarding school. Like you have to respect us because we're 3 years older than you, and it's that kind of vibe.
Fair,
it's
yeah.
just like almost like the army or whatever. But it was like I was just a bit like, nah. Like it's a very protectionist mindset, and I think all the things that you guys are threatened by, I'm starting to realize the things that you don't like is what you're threatened by. And I can see the trajectory of the market making and the market's becoming more digitized, becoming more fast paced. And all your kind of like bully boy, shoot from the hip, oil kings is dying, but they're trying to hold on to it. So there are people that have done phenomenally well at my age, or even way older, even now, who have gone, no, I want to go along with that. And they get a good seat at a trading house and a desk and they smash it. They make a ton of money. So you can't knock it, right? But there's other people, as I say, like for me, I was like, no, I just don't want to do that. Like I just don't see it. Like my trade's going to be, and I'm going to go against the grain. And most people like fucking hate that idea, right?
I think it's because they're making a decision from out of fear, is the most thing I would say.
Right.
They're afraid to challenge the status quo. They'll just go along with it, because if they're getting advice from their friends or family, especially parents, about being safe and getting into a job and security and all that stuff, you're not going to necessarily. And by the way, then that's why you've got to be totally adamant about who I am in terms of when you're going into the world of work. What's my character? What's my attitude? What's my principles? How am I addressing that? And actually, when you really look at it, like you don't want to get sucked into a career or an environment where
15 years later,
you're literally you've got to go into it and go, okay, I'm going to work on myself massively. Because by the way, in terms of like, because let's not bullshit. Brokers and traders and technologists in this environment, it's relentless. It's constant. And you have days where you're exhausted because you got on at 6 a.m. or you have days that when the war breaks out and you're here on Sunday night sleeping in to make sure you get it all sorted, right? Or if you're a recruiter and your client in Singapore asks you to go on a call at 3 a.m., like those things, that's what it takes for you. So if you're not that type of person where it's like, right, drop a button, I'll be there tomorrow, don't worry. We'll leave the office when it's done. I think that's what people have to be more actually.
But I said that wouldn't surprise people to hear that, right? Everyone kind of knows. But I think what might surprise people, we're very curious to get your opinion on. Having been now 35, don't want to age you.
Old.
But, that is a shift from always being the young guys, right?
Yeah.
Suddenly, in the decent chunk of your career. And, okay, I would say my point of view is, this is around the time where you look back at those decisions and you go, day one, 10 out of 10 about money, 10 out of 10 about, not security, but as in like opportunity, basically. Sacrifice everything for the opportunity or whatever. For me personally, I'm sure a lot of people. But as you go through years and you build yourself a career, assuming you get a baseline level of security with pay or whatever, the priorities do shift. And it's things like, again, I actually can't speak for anyone, but it's things like, what am I actually doing? Like, it was so funny. One guy we had from a trade house here, he was only here for a year, but he said the thing about where I was like, they used to beat you into submission with compensation. He's like, I hated the concept of what I was doing. Like, basically, like Le Chiffre in Casino Royale, like doing all these dodgy deals, whatever. He's like, it's fine, whatever, no judgment, but I didn't like my role in that. And
but he couldn't walk away from it.
Couldn't walk away from it because you're making all this money and the potential's so high. And what are you going to say, your wife and your kids, whatever, you could have a much better life if you just shut up and keep going. And so it is about priorities. But what's your view on that, basically?
When you get to it, so obviously we're both now 35, so when you get to a level where you've got dependents and a lot of things count on you in your life at a certain level, of course you've got to take less riskier moves. But when you're entering into the market and growing your thing, all I was interested in was allow me to, if I work as hard as possible and I am successful in a way, allow me to develop and don't hold me back and all that sort of stuff. Of course, then if your mindset shifts when you become, and you have more things to worry about, for sure. But I think what do people move and leave for in terms of companies?
what starts to matter in their head, you see what I'm getting at? Like, so for example, another guy who's actually back with us, funny enough, he left in 21 because his daughter was making him feel bad, essentially. I'm obviously paraphrasing, but like, didn't feel comfortable coming home saying I worked in oil. And now it's kind of done full circle, like whatever. But the point is like, these things are powerful. These things do affect your mindset. And I guess you do have to have a little bit of thought about it, even at the beginning when you're so ruthlessly like, no, I just need to get myself on the ladder. I need to whatever. But you want to be a little bit careful, because in 15 years time, it may sound like, it's miles, and it is miles away, but as soon as it gets there, be careful what you're good at, because then that's it. Yeah. Like, I remember that's in True Detective, Matthew McConaughey was saying that. He's like, basically, we spent the last 20 years obsessing about like child rapists and stuff like that. He's like, Jesus, be careful what you're good at, because this is all I think about, and it's horrible, right? But that's the thing. I think people should think about it like, and I'll answer. I think most people don't think about it, but they start to. When people say like, why do you even do this anymore? Like, what are you doing it for? It's like, because I've got an internal narrative that keeps me going beyond just the money, right? There's loads of things that like, I feel like there is a mission here. There is something that can be beneficial to the world. There's something that challenges me. There's all these things that they do actually start to matter. But
I think that's what people actually respond to.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to have a lot of opportunity and there's a clear mission and that speaks to you, that's naturally why, if you're a high performer and you can.
But people listening there or seeing what you say or recruiting, be like, it's just the standard spiel.
But the thing is, I don't think it is though, because
I don't think it is either. But that's what they say.
Because there's loads of other industries. Look at all the successful digital marketing businesses. I'm obviously stereotyping there, but let's look at any sort of like modern day technology business, for example. That I have clients like that, and they're completely different makeups. They're it's the old adage of like sleep pods and all that sort of stuff. And it's a completely different set of principles where people really adhere to that, and it's totally, and they can work anywhere in the world, and there's no hours, there's no annual leave set, there's no real necessarily like there's the perception of you've got more freedom, but that also comes as a trade-off and a price, because you don't necessarily.
But that's again trends and narratives. Like you're seeing. Remember the COVID work from home thing?
Yeah.
It was like, you will never have to work from the office ever again. Remember Twitter said that, or some other company said that, and then you have to renege on that and be like, everyone has to be on the office. Basically, it's very risky for a company to go out too much with these stuff. Like I think Google with their I think they've had to rein back. Actually, I can't prove that, but I think a lot of their sleep pod stuff and all that has toned down. But it all comes back to what you said like 20 minutes ago, which is like, oil and energy is making money right now, or it was 2 years ago. So suddenly you can afford to do certain things, but as soon as the money becomes tight again, you can't do these other things. Like if you've got a work office space and you spend $1 million a year on the rent, you can't not have people in the office. Like these things start to matter once the margins go down. I think in technology and all that you're starting to see that squeeze. And will they still be like, well, the great thing about working in tech is you get flexibility, you get this, you get that. It's like, will you though? Because once the money starts squeezing, how will those businesses afford to do that? Do you see what I mean?
I read the other day that operating expenses are up like 45% for businesses. So what do you do with that?
Well, that's what I'm saying. You have to tighten all these things.
Totally.
But again, it's another trade for an employee to make, either grad or any, to be like, are these perks, let's call it, my rights, or are they what is out there because of the money? So if you really want certain things, flexibility, whatever, then you need to find an industry that can afford it. That would be how I summarize it, and that needs to factor into your thinking. You see what I mean?
Well, 2 points. So a friend of mine actually experimented with his business, and he did unlimited annual leave. The best employees barely ever took it.
Yeah, that's a classic.
Yeah, best employees barely ever took it. And then the 5 day in the office thing versus hybrid versus fully remote. I speak to so many different types of people, and it's all circumstantial. So I work with a tech business, a tech group, where they are fully remote, and they literally, and they'll have slightly lesser budget bandings for their roles, but people will literally move for a job, say like 10, 20 grand less, because it completely sets up their life for fully remote. Yeah. Whereas some people need social inclusion. They have to be around an environment of working for. Like, I personally can't work from home because I would deal with.
You're watching these narratives shift and evolve in real time, right?
All the time.
Wasn't there a recent one, no, maybe more like 2 years ago, when it was like a lot of this money was getting squeezed in tech companies in particular in 22, when kind of things burst or whatever. And the thing was, can we stop this pizza nights and Christmas parties and stuff like that and just pay me more? Do you remember that was the thing?
Well, also that, do you know what they did? So whether they did it subconsciously or consciously, I'm never going to speak and say the business did it on purpose, but they were essentially just creating like prisons, but like they were essentially creating environments where you didn't want to leave, like games room at the bottom, sleep, all these things. Like you create an environment.
That's nice. Is that not nice?
So for sure.
But you have to be able to afford it though.
Exactly, it's to be able to afford it. And then what happens? What's the first thing that goes? Well, anything that's appears to be not business critical roles, they all get cut.
So again, but the reason why I bring it up is because I know we've talked about this so much, but you'll be having a conversation with someone who will say things like, I really value these things are really important. And you know it's not really true. Like, remember the amount of times we've been like, they've said all these things and they've ummed and ahed and da-da-da-da-da-da, and then you offer them $5 more and they go, yeah, I'll take it. Do you see what I mean? So people have this, and we all do it, but it's in like, it's this projection versus like, what is the reality? What's the underlying thing? Do you see what I'm getting at?
Totally.
So would you actually like, I mean, say the tech hires in particular, or say the non-trading hires, like what's the current narrative right now? I mean, would you see people saying, well, I really want these, what's the most valuable? I want the perks, I want this, I want that, or is it money? Like people in England are starting to be squeezed a little bit, right? Cost of living, all this kind of stuff.
So look, it's the top two things when you're speaking to candidates, and let's just say if we are paraphrasing a group of 100 people, it's being able to, number one, from a company perspective, definitely clarity of communication, right? And in terms of mission and clarity of communication.
That's important.
1000%.
Why? Because they've been screwed by it?
Well, because it's just like, as you say, ambiguity. But
loads of businesses were ambiguous a few years back. And they got away with it.
So for sure. But so if you are being ambiguous in terms of expectations, in terms of role title, in terms of anything, like if you're going to do that, I truly believe that you will have people that will leave. And then of course it's monetarily but it's also it is monetarily from a perspective of under their personal circumstances. So I've got clients, as I said, I've got people that have to drop their kids off to school, for example, and they need that freedom. So they will sacrifice financially to be able to do that, because obviously childcare in the UK is ridiculous, right? So, but on the other hand, some people are just, are obsessed with what they do. And if I have a company that has a clear mission and communication upfront of exactly what I'm, almost talk me out of the position. That is a massive thing for people now, I think.
See, I think, again, the clarity point is so good, because I love those things. When someone says, look, this is what, and you can tell some people mean it, right? And it tends to be the older people, I think, generally, because they've had more time to figure out what's important to them. And as you said, they have their commitments, their responsibilities. They say, I can do this job, but I need this one thing. I need to, be able to pick my kid up from this time to this time, and I need, 1 day a week from home or whatever. Super clear, super precise. It's hard to argue with those people, because if I get that, I'm yours. Whereas people who I find difficult from an employee's perspective is ambiguous the other way, right? And I think that's what I would encourage people to do, is like find out or have a good think about what is your top 3 priorities, negotiate for them, and then kind of let everything kind of go, because
I really try and extract that early on, by the way, because it's threefold. It's number one, environmental, as in what environment do I want to work in, right? Hustle 5 days a week in the office, work is my life, like there's nothing wrong with that, okay? Or you have the total opposite, where you're remote and you get all the flexibility done. Then the next one is financial, of course, and then the other one it's like professional legacy, in terms of title, in terms of what is this going to look like on my CV? Because I say to people all the time, you can keep going from large bank to oil major to wherever you want to be, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's a hugely successful environment and CV. However, if you are a creator and you want to build something and you want to look back and go, I helped scale this business from X to Y, that speaks to you. That's why I love getting to the heart of those 3 things. The problem is sometimes, and employers do it too, but from an employee perspective, from a candidate perspective, I love the people that just don't bullshit. Because the ones that...
You've got such a fascinating job the way you approach it, because you're on some discovery, both sides.
I literally call myself Inspector Gadget.
No, because you're working with the client, call it, or the future employee, to figure out the truth of what drives them, the truth of where they'll fit and whatever. And on the flip side, you're kind of doing that with the employer as well, right? You start out with a role and you're like, we want this, we want that, and it evolves, doesn't it, a lot of the time? You interview
Massively
people and go,
evolves.
actually, no, that isn't what we want. And you've got to sit in between and fit that kind of psyche. So
Anybody that says that hiring is exact science is lying to themselves.
No one does say that.
Nobody gets it 100% right.
No, I would flip it on its head and be like, this is the people that don't want to treat it scientifically. They want to be like, like I said, like the trade houses have been like, there's a recruitment problem, right? But you could look at the process of what you're doing.
It's 100%. And also understand that the employer, the client, the company will have a set of expectations that change, and so will the candidate. And neither of them, I believe, is actually...
I believe so. I'm not sorry to cut you off, but it's just, you're basically an agent.
Yeah.
But for both sides. And it's such an underrated job, actually, because it's like, if you're being an effective agent for us, an effective agent for them, you kind of have to be a double agent in effect, but like everyone's aware of that.
Of course.
It doesn't work any other way, because I bring someone in an interview and they are speaking to get the job, and there is no one to go and like speak with them and get the real truth and bring it out of them and then like gain their trust. And again, you're not trying to screw them over, but you need to get under the layers in order to then allow the employee to do a good job. And basically, we take this phenomenally seriously. We shouldn't really hire you, right? We should be doing it ourselves, given how seriously we take it. But given how seriously we take it, and given how I see all the evidence, I've had to hire because I know the truth. It doesn't work unless you have this distance and this agent and all that kind of stuff. And to be fair, you see this like in the senior side of things. Someone will be like, I want to hire this person. They could easily pick up the phone, get their number from a broker and go, yo, do you want to join? Then they never do it. You go to a recruiter and you go and seek this person. And there's something about that. It changes everything, doesn't it? And I guess we could talk a bit about that now, like the senior side of these things, the senior moves. It's a completely different journey, isn't it? And I guess that what I just said probably speaks to their sense of pride, isn't it? It's like, if you're not going to headhunt me, if you're not going to have a proper discussion with me and have a third party to take it in stages, then this is just a shit show. I guess that's...
I find that part of it super fascinating, actually, because I've done name hires with you, I've done name hires with other clients, and obviously also sometimes you're headhunting certain people for a C-suite role or senior leadership or director role, and people forget when somebody comes into an interview, it's sometimes the first time you've met. And there's an element of getting to know as well, right? And it should be about the company and the expertise and getting to know. And people like the certain distance of not having to speak in a confrontational way or confront certain bits of the conversation. And in retrospect, they're able to go out. And it's not about even confiding, but it's about talking about stuff that didn't come up in the room or being able to speak openly about...
it's amazing, isn't it?
Do you know what I mean?
They should put on remember, we can talk about one of the board hires, present a certain, like... you have a very seemingly transparent discussion. Yeah, I acknowledge what you say with this particular point. Yeah, got it. Then 2 hours later, they say to you the complete opposite.
Totally, it can change. And so it's a difficult one, because is that a certain element of human nature where you don't want to challenge or confront certain things in the room? But I think having that environment where somebody is, as long as they're doing it for the right reasons. I don't understand search businesses or recruiters that can work with every market maker, every bank, every trade house. I don't understand it.
Right.
Because who are you actually serving? Who are you actually adding value to? You can't be on everyone's side. But as an agent and as a recruiter, you have a very important...
That's interesting, actually.
You have a super important part to play where you have to manage the client's expectations and the candidate's expectations to the best of your ability and get the best deal for both parties.
Well, I guess really knowing people intimately and the businesses intimately, like, it does save a lot of time as well, right? Like, you can say certain things like, yeah, they're happy to talk about that, talk about this, but if you kind of going to go down this line, this is not going to be taken well. I think that's good, but sometimes not ideal. If someone's trying to sell their way into a business, then it's bad to tell them the niche stuff, right? Because they'll use it and not necessarily care. On the flip side, if someone genuinely just wants to know if it's a good fit, which you tend to get with seniors, because usually the people you're trying to hire don't need to join you. You're trying to sell them more than they're trying to sell you. So really it's about this is kind of like their red flags, or even like the opposite, like their massive green flags. And that's useful to know going in, because you can kind of see if you can create some harmony in the discussion, right? And like see if you are ultimately a fit. It's like matchmaking, isn't it?
Well, there's two parts of that. You know, you mentioned earlier about people will either know me in the industry or they won't. But in terms of we do a lot of confidential searches and moves where there's a huge benefit to that, where when I've approached people and moved them to a certain business, for example, at some point, if you are headhunting a certain person to come into a business at a higher level, there has to be an element of, because the best people some of the best people aren't looking. Yeah, some of the best people aren't looking. Some of the best hires
almost
are people,
all the way, all the time. Yeah,
correct,
almost
right?
by definition.
For sure. So then, it's a
Because
very
if they were looking, they would have found it already, right?
totally,
Yeah.
and they don't apply and all that stuff. So it's a very difficult environment because you are saying you were excelling at your current company, you are adding value there. You're clearly being looked after because otherwise you'd be looking elsewhere, right? You'd have spoken to your chosen agent that you know and built a relationship with. So you're bringing someone an opportunity like an Onyx or anyone else, and then once they fall in love with it, you've got to say, now you've got to make a decision. It's definitely not an exact science. It's a very difficult thing.
I think you must
right.
find it the complete reverse in a way. Like graduates can probably be quite infuriating for you because they're less, involved in the game of like, just the basics, like replying back and like being like committal to interviews or whatever, or being flaky with their thinking and when they're not being too transparent. That's a very natural thing at like, young 20s. So the frustration tends to be that way and whatever, but you completely flip it on its head when you get senior level because usually it's the employer messing around, right? It's in like, again, I think it's always something that's been good to be like, let's get the feedback from your perspective. Like sometimes like you're not being realistic here. They don't have to join you. They're going to get probably 15% more here or whatever. And let's be honest, you might be on a downward trajectory. Your reputation is taking a hit right now. They're needing to take a chance on you. There's, I imagine, I'm talking for you, but I just, from my own experience and seeing other companies very stubbornly being like, well, why wouldn't you want to join and take, it's almost like they're like, come join me and take a pay cut because we're such a big brand. And why wouldn't you do that? It's so obvious. And you're like, you don't know how to, it must be frustrating for you. Like, you get real.
and not only that, but you also have to articulate to the client as well. It's like that rhetoric of when you're having a discussion, interviewing of why wouldn't you join us? There is an element of you have to sell to them too, right? Of course, the company is...
A lot of big brands don't want to do that, right?
No, they definitely don't. But it's also part of the downfall, I would say. Because, think about it. You forget about counteroffers. You forget about sit-outs. You forget about non-competes. There's a huge element of risk. And you go back to graduates where they listen to their parents. Well, male or female moves will listen to their partners. And so if they're a risk-averse person and they're really happy and they're safe and they've just got to the element, and if they've been uncertain for the last 15 years and they've got, or 20 years now, they're in their 40s and they're suddenly comfortable, and then a rocket comes and like, oh my goodness, it's so big for my career.
Such a good point about the partners, man.
It's massive. It's one of the first things I get under the hood of. Tell me your current circumstances. We chat. Obviously now I have a baby as well. Like I love it because you talk about kids and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And so it's that's a massive part of it. I always say, number one, have you spoken to your boss? What's your relationship like with him or her? Yeah, how close are you? What would they say to you if you said I'm leaving? Right? Have you had that conversation yet? No. Then I say, what would your partner say? What would your wife?
Because you've got to work with them as much. So I've even had this with people I know-ish. And I want them to join, and it's much more of you can imagine it to being like a football manager speaking to a young footballer and their family and their agents. It's like, so this is what we're proposing in general. They want to know you're joining this thing and this is the life you're going to have.
By the way, it's the same stakes. We said this before, it's the same stakes. So, but football, traders and certain brokers earn footballers' money at that age. Yeah. You've got traders in your team that...
No, but what I was going to say is like, I personally think, and I hope you agree, like, this is where it becomes incredibly important to have had a track record with how you approach things and how you treat people. However you want to treat people, consistency is important. Because at least it's like, you're joining Onyx, this is how it is. Like, this is a fit for you, this is what will happen. That to me, like when I've had calls, people being like, look, the company's just gone under, or company has just screwed me on this. Yeah. Do I have a job with you? Because, I don't want to be left here, screwed here. and you're like, well, they know exactly why they're making that call. They know exactly who I am,
It's
what the
clarity
business
of
is.
expectations.
It's clarity of expectations, and they've made a decision. Okay, no, it's time. And will you take me? Because I've already sold. We've already been through this dance, and I already know what you're all about. Whereas, again, I guess going back, I would argue that it's an industry thing at the moment that they're going through, which is 2021 to 2023 made more money than they've ever made before in this industry, in incredible extortionate amounts. And it's actually one of those poison chalices, because you have all this money that's then needed to pay people out. There's people leaving. Everyone's made their money. They retire. And succession becomes this incredibly important thing. But in order to have proper succession, you have proper ethos and philosophy to pass on. If you haven't spent time thinking about those things and knowing what you're going to do next, you're kind of screwed, right? Like it's a fascinating time for that. Like, what is the pitch for a 22-year-old in this industry now? Not thinking, cool, I want to do what you did in the last few years. It's the next 15, 20 years. Where are you going to be in the new landscape of the world? And that, you have to have some vision for that, right? You have to have some philosophies.
It's also very difficult to ask someone fresh out of university for every single individual to know that answer as well. So
no, I'm saying the employers.
No, for sure. I'm agreeing with you. So the employers that don't have the clarity of vision, the clear narratives and communication, they're just you're not going to attract the best people because they don't.
Yeah, if I had something I would want for, and we've talked about this, is like I'd want you to say to clients, like, at the end of the day, there's going to be some rough edges with working with Onyx in particular and whatever, but we'll be honest about what those things are and what we're trying to achieve. And we'd like to be at least acknowledged for that, right? We don't make up shit. We'll tell you what's hard about this. We'll tell you where it's going to be struggling, where there will be these expectations. I think if I was to flip it on its head, look, if I was a kid right now and they were out in the job world, I'd be like, look for the businesses that, or try and avoid the businesses that can't answer like basic structural questions. Like, what are we trying to do here? I remember that's honestly why I left my last job. I remember he yelled at me massively because I was like, I don't really want to start next year like as if we're just starting again. Like, I'm a bit bored. And he went nuts. I'm like, yeah, but it's not bored like, oh, you've done something wrong. It's like I don't know what we're trying to do next, and I need to be sold on this. And it was a question the collective management just couldn't answer. They didn't have a vision beyond what they'd just done. And I don't think there's a problem with that, but it was good for me to know that, to then make a decision. Do I want to limp along here with kind of like a vagueness, or do I want to do the next big thing? And I think there's a priority for leaders, which again, I guess must be frustrating for you, because you need to convey that to employees or future employees. And if your client as the employer can't answer those questions, how are you meant to convey it? You see what I mean? I imagine that's a very hard thing for you to do.
It is, but then I actually wouldn't even look at it as negative. I know you weren't really meaning that, but it's just it's leveling the bubbles on the expectations, right? And then being so brutally honest about what they will be and what it's going to expect of you. And then as long as you're constantly iterating, because you as a business leader yourself have to think about the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, right? I mean, you were asking your previous employer exactly that question. What is our outlook looking like?
But I would say 90%, what I've learned in the last few years in particular, is 90% of leaders, managers, owners, they are actually only looking 3 years forward themselves. And they're looking for how they can exit. So again, all the trade houses and majors, they're getting their money, they're collecting it, and they're buggering off.
Selfishly, from an individual perspective.
From an individual, I wouldn't call it selfish. This is what they join the industry for. They've reached their peak, and then you've got business owners who want to sell their business a lot of the time. Sure. They're just looking for that bid so that they can crystallize.
The leaders aren't incentivized on the succession plans, then, are they?
But that's what I'm trying to say, is in like, I completely sympathize all round, because being in all these different areas. And I would criticize, which is not really fair for me to do, but I would criticize what I think I see with a lot of mid-level companies, small to mid-level companies especially, who've done well, but they're so obviously looking to cash out. It's like, and I've got it all the time, every other quarter, someone says, oh, you're trying to sell Onyx. I'm like, where is the evidence for that?
By the way, it literally, I've had candidates tell me that. I've had candidates about, oh yeah, but why would I go there? I know they're looking to sell. I'm like, who are you speaking to?
I think that's more of a protective narrative from maybe competitors and brokers. But in general, I actually think it's a really good point. Yeah. Is the business you're about to join, the manager that you're going to work for or the owner, are they just trying to sell and go, IPO and go, or have they actually got a plan? And that's where you got to start as an employee. And that's where you got to start as an employer. I think if you're coming to the table to hire someone, you've got to be able to answer those questions. And if you're coming to the table as an employee, you've got to be able to look for those questions. But then, are you ready to join that and take that super seriously? That's the kind of dynamic going on, isn't it?
Well, it also changes the total landscape of how you're going to be working, because if companies are gearing up to sell, they operate and they act completely differently.
Yeah.
Don't they? Completely differently. So if you're going in as an employee, and an employer, you've got to understand that that's the relationship you're about to have, that you're going into. I totally agree with you. You've got to, people have to answer that. But honestly, most people getting in for the first 1, 2, 3 jobs, I haven't had one person. Very rare do those questions come up to me anyway, at least from a recruiter's perspective. Digging to that level of depth, and the ones that do are exceptional.
Thanks, Jordan. We'll leave it there.